Hello, my name is Gabby and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then welcome to my channel. And today's video is my spoiler-free review of Vengeful by V.E. Schwab, which is the sequel to Vicious and book 2 of the Villians series. And before I get started here, I just want to say I will have some content warnings down in the description below for this book if you want to look at those. So because Vengeful is book 2 and this is a spoiler-free review, I will be giving you the plot to Vicious instead. And this book follows college roommates Victor and Eli, and they are both interested in and studying events that could lead to people gaining extraordinary abilities. However, things take a turn for the worse when their research turns from academic to experimental. So if you've been on my channel before, then you may know this, but I am a huge fan of the superhero genre. And one of my absolute favorite parts of that genre are the villains. So it was that combined with the fact that I also really liked V.E. Schwab's A Darker Shade of Magic trilogy that I knew I had to pick up this series. And for the most part, Vicious did not disappoint me at all, and I'm pretty sure I gave it a 5-star rating. And that was back in October of 2019 when I first read Vicious. So it's been a little while since I've read anything from this series because it's now May 2020 while I'm filming this. So it hasn't been that long, but it was long enough to where I really only remember a vague outline of what happened in Vicious. So you may be wondering why I didn't give Vicious a reread if I gave it 5 stars before I read this book. And honestly, I thought about that myself, but I don't really have a good answer for it. Besides, I have other books that I want to read, and I didn't want to prioritize a book I had already read before. But I think it worked out anyway, because Vengeful is pretty much a direct sequel to book 1, so I was easily caught up on any big events that might have just slipped my mind. So I think I want to start with the characters here. So one of the first things I want to say about the characters is I love how they're all like either really bad or morally gray. That is just absolutely one of my favorite things to read in books. There's a lot of them that I want to touch on, and I'm going to be splitting this into 2 parts just for organization purposes. So first we're going to do the returning characters, and then we're going to go into the new ones. And some of the characters I classify as new characters might have showed up for a second in Vicious. Again, it's been a while since I've read it and I don't really remember, but to my knowledge, Vengeful was the first time that they were present. So I think I want to start off with Stell because I have a lot less to say about him than the others. He's like a police officer, detective type of character, and just compared to the other characters in here, I've always found him to be a little bland, and that definitely held up in this book. And the next character is Dominic. So he was a character in Vicious that I did like, but I never really cared about him too much. He's somebody that I've always just wanted more from character-wise. And that definitely continued out through this book, except in this one I actually did randomly start to care about him a little bit. I definitely don't think I got what I was looking for from him in this book. I don't know, something just felt out of place with it. So let's do Mitch next. So I mentioned before that everyone in this series is some level of morally gray. But Mitch comes off like such a sweetheart to me. And I just really like him, and I like the way he interacts with the other characters in the books. I didn't find his presence to be too relevant in here, but I just really appreciated his presence nonetheless. Okay, Sydney. So Sydney was a character that I was really neutral on in book 1. I didn't feel any type of way about her. However, I did find her story to be one of the more interesting ones in this book. I still want to say that I care about her too much, but I like her enough. And I would even begin to say that this book made me start to enjoy her character more. So then there's Eli. I didn't really like him in book 1, and I still don't. I would say he interested me in Vicious, which is something that I can't say for him in this book. I understand his place in the story and why he works so well in it, and I do think he works well in the story. But overall, he just doesn't really do it for me, but there is a character in here that does, and that character is Victor. This guy just fascinates me, because he comes across as really cold and ruthless, but the found family aspect that's present in this series really challenges that, and it's so interesting for me to read about. And he just has a certain flair to him personality-wise. And when I'm reading or watching something with anti-heroes, villains, morally great characters, etc., I just really vibe with that type of personality. And he is by far my favorite character in this whole series, not just personality-wise, but also just overall story and journey-wise too. Okay, so there are 2 newer characters that I want to touch on before I move on to something else. Okay, so the first one is June, and I don't really know how I feel about her. Kind of like Dom, I just kind of wanted more from her, which is weird because there's a lot of her in here. I feel like I just never got a good grasp on her character and what her motives were and what she was doing in here. And the last character I want to talk about is Marcella, and she is a big character in this book. And I was really enjoying her until about halfway through. After I didn't really get why she was still relevant. Like, I get what she was doing and what she was up to and why she was doing it. I guess I just stopped caring about halfway through. Which brings me to a big point about the story for me that I want to make. What exactly was the point of this? Like, I get it's a middle book, and then when book 3 comes out, it might tie everything up, and this one might make a lot more sense to me. Which I need to stop wording it like that, because it did make sense. Like, the story made sense, and I did enjoy it. But there were just so many things in here. When I thought about how they would play into, like, the overall story in, like, a book 3, I just didn't understand their place yet, and I don't know, something just about the whole thing just felt a little off to me. And another big thing that hurt the story for me were the time jumps. There were just too many of them for me to keep up with. I definitely feel like I got my timelines mixed up when I was reading this, because it would jump from like 3 years ago to 4 years ago to maybe 2 years ago. And there was just a lot going on, and almost every character in here had like their own little thing going on in different parts of the timeline, so it was definitely hard for me to keep up with. So I know I spent this video complaining about a lot of this, but overall I really did enjoy it. There's just something about V.E. Schwab's writing and stories that never fails to suck me into them, and I really do like some of the characters in here as well. The concept of EOs, or extraordinaries, has always really interested me. And I did like seeing some new abilities from different characters in here, so I thought that was cool as well. Another thing I've always really liked is just the connection between Victor and Eli. I've always thought that was so interesting, just how they play off of each other and kind of revolve around one another. Overall, I definitely want to say that I liked this book more than Vicious, but I did have a good time with it despite all of my critiques. So I gave this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. And I am really interested in reading book 3 of this if it ever comes out, and seeing how everything wraps up and ties together. Okay, so that's all I have for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell and answer the question that'll be right around here if you want to do that. And hopefully I'll see you here next time. Bye.